I'm Scott Allen Miller. It's the 20th of August, 2022, and welcome to my daily vlog of life in Nicaragua. Today, I started off the day in Ciudad Sandino in Managua, hanging out there last night as we went out, checked out some new restaurants, went dancing, hit like Don Ceviche's and stuff like that. So hanging out in Ciudad Sandino this morning, and then heading into the Metro Centro, which is one of the two big malls, the other being the Galleria. But the Metro Centro is in the middle, and the Galleria is more on the Messiah Road, on kind of the southeast side. So for us, coming from this side, we tend to go to the Metro Centro. Went there because it's also by the UCA bus station, UCA being the University of Central America, and went and did some shopping. Was hoping to be able to find some jewelry for Dominica for her birthday, but it's very difficult to do so. She's highly allergic to nickel, and she just got her ears re-pierced just like a few months ago. So she's wearing earrings again, and she has some she can wear, but they're ones that I got her when we were first dating, or maybe first married. I think before we were married. So very, very long time ago. She would like to get some new ones, so she had some variety. Not a lot of jewelry stores at the mall. There were a few, but getting guaranteed hypoallergenic jewelry, definitely a long shot, so not something to do lightly, and there's a lot of like factors involved, and I am not an expert on jewelry in any way whatsoever, and there's only a few stores. It was very difficult, and doing it in Spanish adds just a little bit more challenge, so that was kind of a bust. Did have lunch at the Metro Centro. I wanted to check out Red Panda, but they really don't have anything without meat in it. That's kind of a local Panda Express sort of chain. But I did go to Mar and Tierra, and they did actually have some really nice fried curvina. That's a local fish, and it kind of had that fish and chips kind of vibe to it. The food was nothing like that, because you kind of get like a big fried fish, kind of like you would get in a big fried haddock back home in New York, but then they slather it in an ajo sauce, a garlic sauce, and then they put it on a bunch of rice and some veggies and stuff like that. So not exactly like a fish and chips, but the quality of the fry kind of gave me that impression. And I think some fried curvina, if done correctly, could suffice to make a fish and chips here. Just some thoughts. But the food was good. From the Metro Centro, walked not too far to the University of Central America and caught the bus back to Leon, which a little bit over an hour and a half. That was a little bit of an adventure because I was very drowsy on the bus and it was completely packed. And at some point I dozed off and my phone slipped out of my hand. Pretty much instantly realized that had happened, but that didn't really make any difference. The moment it was out of my hand, it basically disappeared into a black hole because there's no space to move on the bus. So your feet can't move. You can't lean over and look at anything. You can't get down there. You can't reach around. I have my bag shoved between my feet, which is actually part of the problem. I hit the bag, and that kind of acted like a ramp and sent it off somewhere, but I didn't know where. Had I been staring at it, maybe that would have made a difference, but I don't know. It just disappeared. So for about 15 minutes, had the whole bus looking. I had to have Dominica do a locate my phone and turn on the alarm. We could hear it, but even hearing it, we couldn't find it. Eventually, someone was able to, from a different seat, like get down, lay on the floor, reach way back, get underneath luggage in the back of the van, and find it back there. So all was well. No one had taken it. No one was trying to take it. It hadn't been forgotten. It literally slipped out of my hand and vanished before I could reach down and grab it. And so what a dumb situation, but that's the kind of thing that happens on a really tight bus, so be careful. It's a tough one because you have no way to access your pockets to put it away, and you don't want to have it just loose in like a pocket. That's a good way for it to fall out, so I'm holding on to it. Plus, I need to check it from time to time, but then what do you do? It's always a little bit rough. We did stop at Landers on the way back, so I picked up a bunch of pineapple pastries for the kids. Say that a bunch of times fast, pineapple pastries. And then got back to Leon in the heat, took a taxi back to the house, and had a bit of the afternoon to hang out at the house with the dogs and the kids, catch up on a few things, and just chill. This evening was an evening out with the gang here in Leon, so a whole bunch of us headed out to Barbaro. We were hoping to get salmon because it's the only place in town that normally does salmon, and after ordering and waiting for about 45 minutes, they told us they were out of salmon, so I did not get that, and I was planning on getting that for dinner for myself and for both of the kids. That's what they had sent me out to get them for dinner. So that was kind of a bust. I ended up just getting them regular food and bringing it back from somewhere else on the way. Actually walked from there up to Sundance to get them their fish tacos. Now, I really like fish tacos from Sundance, but it made for a really long evening. I thought we were just going to Barbaro, hanging out, getting dinner, and walking back home. And after a long day yesterday of work and then Managua and then just all the travel, it was like, I just want a quick dinner, hang out with Alan and Anna and Paul and Marcella, and just like everybody hang out and have a good time. Nope. Ended up having to do lots and lots of errands that took many hours because it is Saturday night, so everything's really busy. So Barbaro took many hours to have dinner. That was not the dinner that I had expected. In fact, I had to have Corvina, so I basically had the same meal twice, but at least it was a lot cheaper. And then went to Sundance, and at Sundance it took probably about 2 hours to get dinner. It's expected. It's really busy. They were packed. It always takes a while because it's craft kitchens, so I wasn't expecting it to be fast. Luckily, I did sit at the bar and enjoy some cocktails. I got a Negroni and an Old Fashioned, and it's nice to know that someone can make them here because it's the first I've had them here in Leon. So that was kind of cool. I had an okay time. Like, it wasn't bad. Got to hang out there and then walked back to the house. Got the kids fed very late at night. It was pushing 11 o'clock by the time we got back. Got them fed, and I was exhausted. So pretty much it was straight off to bed at that point once they were done eating. I didn't really get a lot done around the house. So that was my Saturday. Tomorrow is going to be really busy because tomorrow is Dominica's surprise birthday party after her not surprise birthday party to throw her off from the surprise birthday party. So we have a morning of got to cleaning and get everything ready around the house, then a small afternoon pizza party and cake for her. Then we are sneaking off to the beach quickly to try to get there before she does when she returns to go back to work as the hotel manager. We got to get there ahead of her, and the entire staff is going to be waiting to surprise her. I mentioned this yesterday, but in case you didn't see that video, these videos don't go up until after those things have happened, so she is already aware. And if you check my other channel, my older Scott Allen Miller channel, it does have raw footage of that party that you can watch, about 25 minutes, and otherwise I'll show some clips on tomorrow's video, which I've actually already edited, so it's going to upload as soon as this one's ready. All right, now that was the day. Now for a little bit of a topic today, I did want to talk about something that had come up in some other discussions about immigration and residency. This is slightly different than what we've talked about previously with that. In the last few days, we've had a couple discussions about that. This is not a rehash of that, but it did bring these points up. Someone corrected me and said, well, you know, there's lots of people getting immigration here, and they mentioned a bunch of ways. All of the ways that they mentioned are often called immigration, but they are not. They are expatting. They are short-term, meaning non-permanent methods of staying here in the country. So in some of the discussions, I mentioned that tourists are not immigrants, and some people were very adamant on Reddit that immigrants are everybody and tourists are just low-class immigrants, which is not correct. They may be low-class or not, but they are not immigrants. Tourists come in all shapes and sizes, and tourists are not necessarily expats, but there is a large group of expats in Nicaragua. If you have questions about immigrants and expats, go back and watch the videos about that because I delve into it and I think it explains it pretty well. A lot of the expats that are here are tourist expats, meaning they are on tourist visas. That is completely legal in Nicaragua. We have lots of videos explaining the border run system. That's for those people. The 90-30-30-30 system, that is for those people. That is probably the largest group, and that is what almost everyone, if you're going to be any type of longer term stay, you're going to go through that system first, whether it's just a little bit or for a long time, but everyone's familiar with it, and almost everyone has been one of those people if you're not originally from here. Great. So that is the tourism expat modality. You can then move up to some form of longer residency. With longer residency, you don't have to go every 90 or even 30 days to renew something. It's generally a year minimum. That is the year for the retirement visa system. If you do investment and qualify for that, you get a 5-year, but you do have to do a 6-month check-in. Is that 6-month renewal or is that a 5-year renewal? That's up for debate, but you basically get approved for 5 years. The 6-month is just a check-in. It's not a reapplication, whereas the retirement, you actually have to reapply every year. As far as I know, the system is very simple, and you do not have to leave the country to do it, but it is still a reapplication on an annual basis, whereas the investment one is a reapplication on a Decadal system. Decadal? I don't know what that word is. So that one's a little bit better. You basically get better treatment as an investor. If you want to retire here and you want the benefits of that, simply take some of your retirement and turn it into a local investment. And you'll be upgraded. So it's not like you don't have access to that just because you have retired or anything. Nothing of the sort. You always have access to it. It's simply retirement has lower thresholds if you qualify for retirement, that you can do it more simply, and you have to do a little bit more effort because of it. And if you want to put the money in, then at any age you can do the investment process. There are other paths such as marriage visas, and those are kind of permanent, but they also end immediately upon divorce, and you can be surprised with something happening and you having to leave the country quite suddenly. Is that one immigration? That one I'm not going to discuss because, quite frankly, it's a gray area. If you get married and you stay married and that is the intent, then that is immigration. If you use it as a way to get into the country and then plan on getting divorced, that is certainly not an immigration and won't work as immigration. So that one's a little bit fuzzy. But the ones that we normally talk about, the ones that don't involve having to marry a citizen, are expat processes. They do give you a cedula, which is your national ID card. They do allow you to do a lot more flexible things in the country, such as owning a car in your own name and things like that. You just are much more flexible. You are much more part of Nicaraguan society. But what you are not, in any way, shape, or form, is permanent. You may renew, and you may renew for the rest of your life. And if that is the case, you have found a path to immigration where you are never officially an immigrant, but you are here indefinitely. That is fine. And some people do that, and the government recognizes that, and they're okay with that. Like, everyone's okay with that. There's no illegality here. But the system that we're talking about is a system for expats. At no point do you become a permanent resident. Now, just like anywhere, you can go to a place and never leave and be an illegal immigrant and literally never leave and not have any official visa or paperwork to allow you to stay. Of course, you can do that. You can do that here just like anywhere else. And by you can do that here, I mean you can take your chances and try to get away with it. But the idea of immigration is that it is permanent. The idea of these processes is that they are temporary. So these are expat processes specifically for moving you from tourism-based expatting, which some people argue is not yet being an expat. I don't agree with that, but it is. A lot of people will say, as long as you're a tourist, you haven't yet become the expat. You need to get to this long stay visa situation to be qualified as an expat, but you're certainly not an immigrant because it is not a permanent status. And the thing that is important is that immigration status, that full government allowing you to guaranteed stay forever, is essentially out of your reach. It basically doesn't exist. That does not mean it does not exist. It basically doesn't exist. There is no standard path to it. No one talks about it. It doesn't matter how much you are investing in this country. People aren't going to bring it up and say, ooh, you put in so much, you could become an immigrant and stay here and not have to do a 5-year renewal. That is not going to come up, right? Is there a path? If it is the thing you are most passionate about, then could you consider it? Maybe, but it's going to be very, very difficult. And some of the official paths that have existed in the past have either been ended by Nicaragua or they require something that has been ended by the United States. And so most of the paths that were common just half a decade ago no longer exist or currently do not exist. So even if you're looking at data online, it's mostly incorrect. And every site that we checked online about immigration and expat visas, all of them were completely wrong. The information you're seeing online does not reflect what is actually the law here in the country. And the law here in the country is followed. It's not like, well, it's the law, but people don't do it. No, it is very strict, very straightforward. It's not that hard, but you need to talk to a lawyer who knows immigration and is familiar with the current laws, not something they found on a website 5 years ago, because that information is just garbage now, because that's how, COVID really changed everything, right? Now, in that same discussion, we were talking about, well, in Panama, they have this $100,000, it used to be less, but it just went up to $100,000, and you can buy residency in Panama, and the $30,000 residency in Nicaragua is a steal by comparison. And certainly $30,000 is a great deal compared to $100,000. That is completely true. It is, and maybe the $100,000 is wrong, and maybe $500,000. It is also completely different. In Panama, when we're talking about that number, we are talking about a immigration number. That is a citizenship number. You're buying citizenship, and citizenship in basically any country in the world is super expensive. And just so we're clear, citizenship means you have the right to vote. It means you get a passport. It means you cannot be revoked. Once you are a citizen of a country, you are a citizen. You belong to that country. You can have more than one citizenship, but depending on where you're coming from and going to. But in general, the concept of multi-citizenship is a normal thing. And Panama is one of those places where gaining citizenship is within the realm of reason, to the point where everyone talks about it. So if you are talking about what does it take to move to Panama, nearly every discussion is going to be of a large number, a lot of work, and the thing you get at the end of the day is permanent citizenship because you become an immigrant into the country and you are granted a passport. When we talk about coming to Nicaragua, universally we are talking about a small amount of money, a small amount of effort, a temporary stay visa that is simply longer than a tourist visa, and you do not get citizenship, you do not get the right to vote, and you do not get a passport. So when we're talking about things like Panama and Paraguay and Uruguay, typically we are talking about things where you care extensively about the government, you care about how it's going to affect you, how you're going to interact with the government, and all those things, because you are looking at becoming a passport holding citizen, and you will pass that on to your children potentially, right? Because that's what happens with citizenship. If assuming they're small children or not yet born. If they're adults, it's different. If you're in Nicaragua or Guatemala or many countries like this where we have these smaller barriers to entry, we are not talking about those things. You could care less about the government because it is not your concern. You are not going to become a voting citizen. You are not tied to the country beyond staying for the length of time that the visa is there. And the thing that you hope is that you maintain a good relationship and that the government renews your visa. That is basically your extent of interaction with them. Not completely, but basically, right? You are not part of the system. It is not your government. They are simply a visa issuing entity that allows you to stay and be in this country. It is a different commitment on both sides. In Panama or Uruguay, when you're doing the process, everyone talks about the country. The government of that country is making a massive investment in you in addition to you in them. You are tying yourselves together for forever in a way that is extremely difficult to separate, and in many cases is not possible to separate. It is a commitment of epic proportions. It will change everyone's lives. When you're coming to a place like Nicaragua, while you may wish to have that, and that may be a great thing, Nicaragua is not generally extending that as an offer to people, and I know of no one who is looking for it. Of course, that it is not offered changes what you come here looking for, right? I have a strong passport. I have an American passport, and I have access to a foreign passport as well. I'm already have availability of dual really strong passports. When I'm looking for a place for permanent or long-term residency, that is not on my radar at all. I do not need to replace one of my passports currently. So when I'm looking at places, I don't need to spend all that money to get access to the Panamanian system. I don't need to spend €250,000 to get a Spanish passport or whatever. I don't need those things. Those are not beneficial to me, so I'm not looking for it. I'm looking at Nicaragua as an expat experience because it is a low barrier of entry. It has exactly what I want, and I am able to reside here more or less as long as I am a good participant in society and everything is as I want. I get to stay as long as I want, and the government is happy to have me here. It is a symbiotic relationship, but it is not one where we are making a big commitment to each other. If I become a bad citizen and I start acting, not a citizen, but a bad member of society, if I act badly, if I refuse to participate, if I start committing crimes, it is very easy. Long before any legal recourse is taken, the government can simply say, you're not a very good candidate for long-term residency, denied. And it's that simple, right? I may be stuck here for 5 years, stuck, meaning they may be stuck with me for 5 years if that relationship goes sour and I refuse to leave. But even then, I mean, there's still recourses. Nothing is permanent. But in working within the visas, all it takes is getting to that 5-year renewal and saying, on my side, I don't feel like renewing. I feel like moving on to another expat location, and there's no tie for me to break. And if I get to that 5-year renewal and I've been bad and the government says, you are not someone we want in this country, they can simply not renew my paperwork, and I'm forced to leave. And it's that simple. We are always at the option of changing our relationship as makes sense in the moment. But when you're in a full immigration with citizenship, it is totally different. No one is allowed to just break that. Of course, a government could, in theory, march you to the border and kick you out, but other governments will be like, whoa, this is your citizen. You have to deal with them. And then until someone's willing to take you as an asylum seeker, they're going to fly you back to that country and make them deal with it, right? It's a different thing. So we have two very, very different items, two very different approaches that we're talking about there, and it's important not to mix them. For the most part, in most of the world, you are not going to be looking at immigration. Countries that allow immigration in any easy way, that have a passport that you desire to get, are generally in very high demand. They're very expensive. That system is difficult. If they allowed people to just move in casually, people would flood in, because getting a foreign passport that is unique and powerful is a really big deal. So people want a Panamanian passport, they want a Spanish passport, they want a Mexican passport, right? These are really good global passports that give you a lot of power as an expat. Remember, immigrants are still expats. So your ability to go elsewhere in the world is emboldened by having one of those passports. But if you already have a passport that is in that category, you don't really need to go spend a lot of money or effort to get another one. Not that it wouldn't be nice to have another one, but it's not generally worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. And normally those commitments are big, much bigger than that. They sometimes require that you spend the majority of your time in that country for many years. And the process often takes many years. For example, moving into Switzerland takes a minimum, I believe, it's been a while since I researched it, but something like a minimum of 12 years. And after 12 years, your village has to vote on whether or not they want you to be able to get citizenship. There's no guaranteed path at all. There's only a guarantee that you will invest a huge portion of your life in the hopes of getting approved eventually in a system that's quite risky, quite expensive. So anytime you're looking at a passport system, assume you are going to either spend outrageous amounts of money or outrageous amounts of time and effort, or quite possibly a combination of the two. But most places that we look at, normally, all the places in Central America, the majority of South America, most of Europe, when we're looking at those countries, getting a passport is nearly impossible, and no one is really seriously pursuing that. Somebody is, normally people who have decided that it's their homeland, or they are marrying into that culture, and there's some reason that's tying them to those places. But for those of us who are traveling the world as digital nomads or investors, or just looking for the right place to be able to live our lives, those things are not important. For me, staying here in Nicaragua, I could care less whether or not I'm a citizen, right? Because I have the right to stay, or the privilege of getting to stay, regardless of that. I don't have any benefit to be gained by becoming a citizen, and it would cause a lot of complications that I don't need to deal with. Since I don't need to, that's fine, right? This is the perfect situation for me and for tons of people. Most of you watching the show, certainly not all, but most of you watching the show are coming from a nation where you have a powerful passport already. The US, Canada, UK, much of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, etc. If you're coming from those places, you have really no real reason to be seeking an additional passport, and especially not one from a smaller country that doesn't have the most powerful passport. Nicaraguan passports, it is sad to say, are not very powerful on the world stage. They are even problematic within Central America to some degree, as we witnessed on our recent trip to Guatemala. Even the neighboring countries with whom there are very close visa ties still make it difficult for those carrying a Nicaraguan passport to move through those countries. If you had dual passports, you would not use your Nicaraguan passport even in Honduras and El Salvador. It's that dramatic. So it's not something that you would be seeking under normal circumstances. If you wish to leave your home country completely, not just physically remove yourself from it, but remove all political ties to it as sort of a political or a tax statement, well worth making potentially, then you're not going to be looking at a country like Nicaragua. It's simply not on the table. You need to be looking at a Panama, a Uruguay, or a Portugal. Plenty of countries that will service that. They are completely different things. So I just really wanted to cover that because it's such an important thing, and I don't want anyone getting those confused, because that came up and I'm like, these are very different things. And it occurred to me that looking at this stuff from the outside, it may not be obvious. And when we're talking about citizenship and residency, these are wholly different things. Like and subscribe. I'll see you all tomorrow.